Hello, dear viewer. I have a confession to make. Something so sinister, so unapologetically evil, that I have abstained from telling anyone for fear of retaliation. My secret? I've never played Fallout 3. Yes, I know. How can someone such as I, a self-proclaimed Fallout fan, have never played this open-world masterpiece? My years up until this point have been meaningless. A worthless dribble of waking up, shitting, and going back to sleep. An endless cycle of repetitive days that have slowly eroded my very humanity. That is, however, until now. Yes, dear viewer, I am powerful, I am fulfilled, I am whole again, and I have finally played Fallout 3. Ever since I've played Fallout 3, I've garnered vast wealth, unconquerable power, and of course, the ladies. Fallout 3 is the best game I've ever played. It is quite simply the only game that matters in this world. This pointless world that isn't being saturated with the brilliance of Fallout 3. But what makes Fallout 3 the best game there ever was? The best game that will ever be. It's simple, so simple in fact that a guy with only 1 point in intelligence, such as myself, could explain it to you. Let's begin with the role-playing, shall we? The backbone of any good RPG, of course. I wonder what RPG stands for in action RPG, whatever. It matters not, because the system found in Fallout 3 is lifted straight out of Fallout 1 and Fallout 2. But unlike those far inferior games, this system only has a couple more redundancies and far less crutches. I mean, why would Fallout 1 have a speech skill and speech system that is barely explained? Here, in a much better and more influential game, I mean seriously, nobody knows about Fallout 1 unless they're, over the age of 50? The speech skill in Fallout 3 is based on percentage, because why wouldn't it? Why wouldn't investing in a skill only amount to a chance to access special dialogue? Everything else doesn't matter. Have a high science skill in a science-related conversation? Can't use it because you wouldn't know what makes a good role-playing system. What about being a meanie-weenie and talking to people as if they were garbage? Also doesn't matter. Austin 316, you're gonna get your ass kicked if you keep making those stupid questions! But what does it matter? For what reason would you want to have a decent speech system in a dialogue-oriented role-playing game? Nobody can make a better dialogue system, and you know it, dear viewer. For crying out loud, all people do is complain and complain. Can't you see that this is the only suitable option for this style of game? I doubt any other game can make something equal or better than what we have in Fallout 3. Okay, how about the fun part of role-playing mechanics? How about the combat, and how do you solve problems? Obviously, the team of Bethesda circa 1977, when they were creating this game, decided that different doors could be opened with either high science or lockpick skills. Amazing stuff. That's all you need. That's all you need. But they took it to the next level, transcended human consciousness, and peeped into the gray matter of Hideo Kojima. What they saw will shock you. Women wearing leery costumes, but also amazing game design. Occasionally. So what did they add in addition to opening doors, unlocking terminals, and saves? Seriously, the decisions here stumped me to high heaven. Who would have thought that these different skills could have more than one application? Thankfully, the application stopped there. What about quest having different outcomes depending on how you build your character? What are you talking about, bro? That wouldn't even work. I mean, do you hear yourself right now? You sound dumb. Alright, what about the other, 7 skills? Well, good thing you asked. They don't amount to much, but that's by design, of course. You see, there was so much content in the game already, a plethora of decisions so big that it would fry the brain of the common rabble, such as you and I. So what did Bethesda circa 1475 do when designing this game? They limited what you could do with those other non-combat skills in order to make the game more accessible for people such as you and I. Why would anybody want to play with a role-playing game that lets you use different aspects of your character that you created to solve problems you get to the game with? That's silly, and frankly, I doubt that any game could make something like that. So what about the different quests? That's important to the role-playing genre as well. How are the quests? I don't even know what you asked your viewer. You already know the answer. They're frankly complete and utter shining beacons of game design. I mean, seriously, I love following the compass to have conversations I have no influence on and meeting boring people. It's just like real life, making it the most immersive game I've ever played. The quest, and through association the main story, is so good that it keeps you on your toes. Maybe it was my fault that I didn't catch the extremely subtle analogy or world building or character building that this game is trying to achieve. I mean, this is kind of the developer's fault for putting such a dense and macabre story into a video game, because everyone knows that video game stories are for babies and that the video game medium shouldn't be taken seriously because it doesn't have any connections to sex traffickers. But I digress. The story is honestly too much for the quest designers to create interesting uses for the character that you create. So it's understandable that the only meaningful specking that you do when creating your character is how you decide to dish out damage. However, even in that situation, the Bethesda developers circa 0 AD knew that people would have too much trouble with the gunplay, so they made melee combat boring to balance things out, and forgot to add iron sights to the guns because they were really busy that day. I mean, I doubt anybody could add iron sights to these guns anyway. The models are too complex and it would mean redesigning entire weapons, and that wouldn't make any sense. That'd be pointless. I know this is a DLC problem, but this is another example of the developers on their mountain in the Middle East somewhere, knowing what the players want. And point lookout, spoilers by the way, you can't actually break the glass jar that the brain is in with melee weapons of any kind. It needs to be a shooting device or you can't progress, meaning if you were an imbecile like I was, then what happens is that you would have soft locked and needed to reload a save. Fortunately, I know a little bit about hacking, so I was able to save myself from my mistakes and give myself a gun. Anyway, this game is the epitome of role-playing, a standard that should rally every other game in history, because like I said, the developers released this like 5,000 years ago or something. I'm not sure. I only recognize the years I was conscious as being legitimate, so like 3 years or something. Mark my words, if a game were to come out using this exact same engine and similar assets, I guarantee you that it wouldn't be half the game this is. Seriously, if there was a situation where Bethesda circa 2008 contracted a studio, I don't know, Obsidian, to make a sequel to Fallout 2, and they called it something like Fallout Nevada or something, and it turned out to be a better game than this was, I'll eat my own shoe. Moving on, what about that exploration? Everyone knows that in the Bethesda title, the main draw, the main event, the topless lady, man, dancing on stage, is in fact the exploration. Beautiful worlds, excellently realized and wonderfully executed. The art design being so good and unique that it stands out even among a sea of copycats. A Bethesda game is truly unique. Too bad that those developers must have taken the day off or something. If I were to describe how bad this game looked and how boring it is to explore, I couldn't, because the palette of gray, brown, and black is so drab, so last season, so not chic, that it makes me have a nervous breakdown and causes me to have sloppy sex with a 67-year-old cougar who lives down the block and gives me nice gifts such as vintage Heatwave records she finds one day while cleaning out her closet. I digress. But what really bothers me is that you look at Morrowind and you see a strange, alien but interesting environment that captures the imagination. You look at Oblivion and you see rolling greenery clashing with the hellish shreds of the Oblivion gates. But then you look at Fallout 3 and it looks like they forgot to process the game in Technicolor. It feels lifeless, and you could argue, well, of course it's lifeless. It's the apocalypse. I know it's the apocalypse, but that doesn't mean it has to look boring. Look at Fallout 1. The game looks more interesting than anything in Fallout 3, and it was made during the Carboniferous period. Thankfully, Fallout 4 and 76 do have a lot more color and are not harmful to the eyes like Fallout 3 is. But that's only one side of the coin. What about the actual exploration? This is an interesting thing, dear viewer. Just like when I don't use my car for 3 weeks and wonder why the battery died, the same thing happens to Fallout 3. Because the game is so ugly and the environment so bland, it doesn't make the player want to explore. Rather, it makes them skip over potentially interesting content because they will assume it's more of the same if it has the same color palette. Also, the structure of the map is horrendous. Just like that top you're wearing, darling. Please, for the love of all that is good, take it off and go put on the one with the frills. Why did they think it was a good idea to completely wall off major sections of the city itself and have the player go through those forsaken tunnels of hell to get to pockets of city? In the game that shall not be named, the map had major highways in its center, creating an anchor for which the player can diverge from whenever they wanted. But that game also has problems. Just look at the city in that game as well. But at least in the desert, you don't have to go through metro tunnels. Also, in the desert, you can remember your name. So what? Is this one of the few Bethesda titles that are boring to explore? You know what I'm going to say? Every Bethesda title is boring to explore. And that's the bottom line. They are pretty, some at least, but they are all boring to explore because I hate walking mindlessly in one direction in hopes to find something worth my time. Because if the main quest doesn't send you there, is it truly worth going there? Think about it. Think about the fish market as well, for that is critical for your spiritual enlightenment. So what about that Fallout 3, huh? Overall, I think it's a good jumping on point for anybody wanting to get into Fallout. The systems haven't aged too badly, and even though the game looks like shit, your eyes will adjust. Fallout is one of my favorite series, but only if it's in the desert where it belongs. And that's the bottom line, because Stone Cold said so. And as always, goodbye.